Review videos are a result of trial and error that has gone on behind the backgrounds in order to test a product out and for us to bring you our final opinions on the products. The issue with that approach is that more often than not, by the time we have our opinions on a product, we have done all the tests off camera. So a lot of the times what we end up with is maybe some completed artwork that show the product having been used, but they don't show the process, how that artwork was created, whether there was any difficulty in creating it. So there's a little bit of taking our word for it involved rather than seeing for yourself how the product worked. And in order to get around that, I have decided to start a new series called Let's Test. And in this series, I will be going through the trial and error process on camera with you. So in today's video, I am testing out Strathmore's Bristol board Vellum surface paper using the Staedtler Mars Lumograph pencils and the Staedtler Mars Lumograph black pencils. So really what I'm doing is testing out graphite pencils on this particular surface. In the next few videos in this particular series, not necessarily each week, but when I can get them up, I will also be testing out different products on this paper. So watercolor, markers, ink. I'll be testing as many products as I have available on this paper to see how it holds up against different products. This paper has a vellum surface, which pretty much just means that it's textured rather than being smooth. According to the descriptions, therefore, this paper should be good with graphite pencils, colored pencils, charcoal, and anything that requires texture. The paper itself is a favorite among a lot of artists, so I thought I would give it a go because I am looking for new paper to try out, professional grade paper to try out with my graphite pencils. The first time I used this paper, I tried colored pencils on it. Bearing in mind, I'm no expert in colored pencils, so in my amateur opinion, I'll say that yes, this paper does work well with colored pencils. Graphite pencils, on the other hand, is my speciality, so this is something I feel like I can confidently comment on. Just to give my conclusion first, I will say that this isn't the worst paper I've ever used with graphite pencils, but it isn't the best either, and to be perfectly honest, cheap cartridge paper I think is still far better than using this paper for colored pencils. So in terms of the issues that I have, first of all, for some reason, no matter how hard I press down with my pencils, I can't seem to achieve the darkest tone that I want, which I could do if I was using paper which is far more textured, such as cartridge paper. And I know that cartridge paper isn't exactly regarded as professional, especially in comparison to Bristol board, but in all honesty, if it works better, I don't really see what the issue is with using it. So the first thing that I notice is that I just can't get the intensity that I want with my graphite pencils on this paper, whereas I know I can achieve it with the very same pencils on cartridge paper. And the only real difference is that the cartridge paper has a far more textured surface and the Bristol board vellum surface paper has a very smooth surface, even though it's described as having texture. See, the second issue I have with this paper is that it feels closer to card than it does paper with texture. And the worst paper I have ever used with graphite pencils is smooth card. Graphite pencils just don't lay down well on smooth paper. And when I first got this paper, I did expect it to have texture because that's what it's described as having. But in all honesty, when I first looked at it and felt it, it reminded me more of card than it did textured paper. My initial thoughts were therefore, this is not going to be good for graphite pencils. And now, after having completed this drawing on it, I would say that I'm 50-50 with the paper. When we tone, there's really two ways that we can do it. The first is by using a paper stump, and the second is what I call fine line toning, i.e. building up tone by putting fine lines next to each other. When it comes to fine line toning, which is my favorite method of toning, this paper was a lot harder to get a smooth laydown with. So I will say that when it comes to fine line toning, cartridge paper is still my favorite paper to use. However, when it comes to creating tone by smudging, this paper is actually a lot better to work with. And that makes sense because it has a rather smooth surface. And when you're blending, you're trying to get a smooth result. So this paper ended up being surprisingly good when it came to blending. So if you like to create graphite pencil artwork with a lot of blending, I would recommend this paper. This might be the one for you. If you also don't like the texture on cartridge paper, maybe it's a bit too much for you, then this paper could also be the one for you. I could get away with drawing on this paper with graphite pencils, but if I have other paper available which has more texture on it, I would immediately choose that above this one. It's by no means the worst paper I have ever used for graphite pencils, but it's not the best either. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to with this paper. I have a feeling that it will be really good for watercolor and ink, and also possibly markers. But those tests will be for another video, and hopefully I'll come up with different drawing designs for those videos so that you won't get bored of me testing out the same paper over and over again with different mediums. I hope that this video was helpful, and if there's anything else you want to know about graphite pencils on this paper, please let me know in the comments below. And thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.